Hey there, folks. Happy Friday to you. I hope you're having, or hope you had a fantastic week trading. Coming at you with this week's market wrap and sector watch. So the Fed did it again. Uh, Talked about raising the rates and then failed to follow through. Market got a nice little bounce off of that. We got some help from the likes of Apple, which actually pulled back a bit today on a negative report about their phone sales. But all in all, a really nice week for tech. We gapped up day before, or gapped up yesterday, got out of the upper Bollinger Band, and now pulling back. So it wasn't a big surprise that we pulled back today, heading into a weekend. Some profit taking should have been expected, but it wasn't a full blown sell off, right? So I think that we could still be in a very, tight range, choppy market as we move forward, even with the dovish move from the Fed. We do have next week. We've got OPEC that is meeting. We also have the debate between our two presidential candidates. That could be pretty interesting. So could just remain in a tight, choppy range. There's just not a lot of conviction out there to be long because everyone thinks that the market is overvalued. So not a lot of value plays out there, and it's tough to go short because every time you try to go short, you get a rip your face off rally. So very interesting market. You know, maybe we continue to chop around into the end of the year, or actually until we find out who the next president's going to be, and then we could get some pretty wild action there. But so Nasdaq pulling back. Now what we want to see is if this 20 or 52.85 right in that area can hold this support. Actually, we could even call it 52.75. Let's see if 52.75 holds as support, which happens to coincide with the 8 EMA. Let's take a look at the IBB, which really has had an impressive move. But, we tagged 300 yesterday and piercing the upper Bollinger Band. Again, not a big surprise that we pulled back. What we want to see is we want to see that this area, maybe 295, 297, somewhere in there, can hold as support now. We're up a lot of days in a row, so it wouldn't be a big shocker if we got a continuation of a little bit of a pullback here, but that could be also present an opportunity to go long on some biotech names, or you know um, like I'm talking like the big boys, like the Gileads, BMY. It really kind of looks like it's trying to base out a bit. Maybe has found its bottom. Uh, Held up really, really well. BMY did this week. So I think that next week if we get a pullback in the IBB, I think that could present an opportunity to get long some names. Even if we come back all the way down to this 287 area and hold that as support, that would be pretty healthy as well. So IBB pretty strong. All right, let's take a look at the IWM. Big gap up. Uh, right into the upper Bollinger Band, basically, and pull back today, have a gap to fill. So it wouldn't be a huge surprise if we were to come down and fill this gap, maybe even come down and test this trend line, but come down and fill the gap somewhere around 123, 124, right in that area, see if that holds as support. Let's take a look at the SMH. So made a new high yesterday, pierced the upper Bollinger Band, had a little bit of a pullback today, been one of the hottest sectors. You know, it had a very nice bounce off the 50 EMA. What we would like to see here, or what I would like to see here, is maybe a pullback to the 60, actually 66, right? Pull back to 66, see if this holds as price support. It did pull back today, but it was not on significant volume. So pulling back to 66, having that act as support would be healthy. Let's look at the S&P 500. So nice little two-day pop after the Fed meeting, up into price resistance, pull back. Now we want to see if we can hold somewhere around 2160, see if that holds as support. Back this up a little bit here. The key area that we really need to hold is right around here at this 2134, 2135, right? If we break below 2134, 2135, I think that becomes problematic. But for right now, you know, wouldn't be surprised if we saw a pullback. Really what I'd like to see hold the support is 2150, but we'll see what happens next week. So oil, you know, so we got some news this morning talking about Saudi Arabia had made a proposal that if Iran will cap their production, they will reduce their production, and Iran came back and said no. There isn't a meeting next week, but you know, consensus went from there could be a deal to there most likely isn't going to be a deal, and you saw a pretty strong reversal in oil yesterday for the pro members at alphawolftrading.com. I talked about the fact that we had a nice 3-day run in oil, that we were coming up into a potential short-term area of resistance, so it wouldn't be a big shocker if we had a pullback in oil. What we want to see is on this pull, if it holds support, you know, at basically $9.80 or so, 10. So yeah, $9.80 is what I'm looking at to see if it holds it as support. If it doesn't, potentially coming down and doing maybe a little double bottom test here around $9.32. So with oil coming down, you can expect that we had a little bit of a pullback in the XLE, which talked to the pro members about the fact that we had broken down below this trend line here, popped back above it, wanted to see if we could stay above it, and today we failed to do that and closed just above the 100 EMA. So we'll see what happens with XLE next week. XOP had a nice little pop back over some price resistance and then wound up closing below it today, closing just below the 50 EMA. Retail, kind of doing a whole lot of nothing, right? I mean, we did bounce back above this short-term trend line here. Didn't really do a whole lot today, not a lot of volume. We'll see what happens with retail next week. Mining and metals. So, you know, so we had an announcement today about banks and their ability, you know, they would have to have substantial amounts of capital, more capital, to be involved in commodities trade. So I don't know all the specifics of what came out, but it definitely impacted gold and a lot of the commodity plays today, and we'll see if that continues next week. Probably get some more info out over the weekend of exactly what was proposed, but that could continue to put some pressure on metals and mining, so keep that in mind for next week. Consumer discretionary, not doing a whole lot, coming up into potential price resistance right around $80. Actually tagged it yesterday, pulled back a little bit today. I don't think this is a really healthy candle there, but we'll see. Consumer discretionary not looking all that strong. Healthcare did manage to retake the 50 EMA, but is right at this short-term trend line, finding some resistance there. We'll see if we can take that out next week. Utilities, after a nice little pop after the Fed, taking a little break after piercing the upper Bollinger Band, but it does kind of look as though utilities could be on people's radar once again. Financials, this is pretty surprising. Financials held up actually pretty darn well this week, even after the Fed did what they did, which was nothing. You would have thought that the financials probably would have taken a bit bigger of a hit, and they didn't. So kind of interesting there. We'll see if they can hold up next week. Let's see. Materials sector. Again, this sector could be weak off of that news that came out. Not a real healthy looking chart right here. Right, pierced the upper Bollinger, or pierced the lower Bollinger Band, had a little bit of a snapback bounce into this trend line resistance, pulling back a little bit more. Not a lot of accumulation going on there, so I'm not real crazy about this chart. It kind of looks like a bear flag there. Home builders, you would have thought that the home builders would have gotten a better pop off of the Fed announcement. They did get a little pop, but not a whole lot of follow through there. Still not a very attractive looking daily chart, but we'll see what happens with home builders next week. Let's see, aerospace and defense. So here's aerospace and defense, broke below this shorter term trend line right here, and now is back up testing this trend line where it's finding some resistance. Would not be surprised if we saw more of a pullback here, and see if we can hold this $56 level as support for a second time. Maybe get a little bit of a double bottom there, short-term double bottom for a potential bounce, but we'll see. Coming up into an interesting area. After the after the presidential debate, this could be an interesting sector to keep an eye on, depending upon what is said. And let's see, industrials. I think I missed industrial. No, I talked about industrials. Still not a super healthy looking chart on industrials either. Need to get back up and retest that $59 area or take that out. Let's see what the dollar did today. So the strength of the dollar is, plays a key role in a lot of this stuff that we trade. Had a couple of weak days, and today we got a little bit of a bounce, but nothing significant. I think the dollar continues to trend to the downside because there's nothing to strengthen the dollar, right? I mean, unless the Fed continues to jawbone, which there was some jawboning today about raising the rates from one of the Fed members. And that kind of seems to be the ongoing theme, right? Just jawbone about raising the rate, and then don't raise the rate. So we'll see what happens, but the dollar appears to be trending lower, and if the dollar trends lower, I think that could be good for gold and miners, but really need to get a good grasp and understanding about what this potential change could do. See the minor ETFs, GDX and GDXJ, after a nice little pop after the Fed pulled back. Same thing with Nugget and JNUG. All right, and let's take a look at Nugget real quick. And let's see what gold actually did. So, it's interesting. The miners and the ETFs had a little bit of a, pullback today, and gold actually held up fairly well. So I really think the action in the miners had a lot to do with that announcement. And hopefully we get some clarity about that over the weekend. And let's take a look at one last thing. Let's take a look at the IYT, the transportation sector, which came up into price resistance at 144. Had a little bit of a pullback today, nothing significant, just like the rest of the market, right? Just didn't have a whole lot of conviction after a 2-day run, and people taking some profits before the weekend. So for the most part, I think that we could just continue to grind higher unless we get some, huge news event that changes everything. But the Fed clearly is not in the way right now. Um, we could continue to see some grinding higher, at least for the next few weeks. We'll see what happens after the presidential debate, and we'll see what happens with OPEC next week. I mean, if they do actually come to an agreement next week, you could see oil spike and see some of the oil names get a nice pop. So wouldn't be surprised if we get a little bit of a pullback in the IBB. I think that could present an opportunity. Let's just take a look at LABU and LABD. So today, it was really tempting to try and take LABD a couple of times. I refrained because there just wasn't enough conviction behind any kind of sell-off, right? It just seemed like there was just a lot of low volume profit taking happening. So if the IBB really does roll over, I think you get an opportunity to make a trade in LABD, LABU, which was piercing the upper Bollinger Band yesterday. So not a big surprise that it pulled back a little bit today, right? But it wasn't a huge pull. So for the most part, I am feeling as though the bulls could continue to benefit as we just kind of grind higher, barring any unforeseen traumatic events for the market. But some good moves in some low float stocks this week. There were some really good short-term trading opportunities, and I don't know. We'll see what happens next week. I'm sure we've got some pretty darn good-looking chart setups out there. I will be doing stocks to watch Sunday morning at 8 a.m. Vegas time. It's going to be 10 stocks for the week coming up. And if you can join me, fantastic. If you can't, that's all right. If you like what I do here, come check us out over at alphawolftrading.com. We have a free chat room for all. And that's it. I'll see you all on Sunday morning, 8 a.m., Ticker TV. See you then. Enjoy your weekend.